Planting your carrots by seed is really the only way to go. They are a crop that should never be transplanted. If you do transplant them, they're likely to grow poorly and you're really not going to have as healthy of carrots as you would if you planted them directly by seed. So I'm going to share the step-by-step process of how to plant them by seed and show you really just how simple it is. So the very first thing is that you just want to start off with a really well-prepared garden bed. You want to make sure that the soil is loose and drains well. If you've ever grown carrots before and they've been really misshapen, it's likely that your soil was too hard or there was lots of dirt clods and rocks in there that caused the roots to be misshapen. So as long as your soil is really well worked up and it's nice and loose and fluffy and drains well, that's the first step to healthy, well uniformed carrots. And so then you want to make sure you water in your garden bed first. Carrot seeds are really tiny, and so you want the soil to start off moist so that the seeds stay in place when you plant them. If you plant in dry soil, when you water, they're going to get kind of misplaced. So start off with a well-watered, moist garden bed, and then you just want to dig a really shallow trench. Some people just sprinkle their carrot seeds right on top of the soil, but I don't like to do that because then they kind of get misplaced when you start watering. So I just dig a really shallow trench with the edge of my garden trowel, and you want it to be only about 1/4 of an inch deep. You can even just use your finger and just make a slight trench or just a very shallow trench with your finger. And then because the seeds are so small, seeding can be a little bit tricky. So there's so many seeds in just a really small amount. So there's just these tiny little carrot seeds, and even though it is a little bit more time consuming, I like to just only grab a couple at a time and drop them every inch or two. If you try to shake them gently, you're bound to get a whole clump of seeds in one spot, and then later on you're going to have to just thin those out. So if you just take your time and just grab only 2 to 3 seeds at a time and just gently sprinkle them, you're going to have much better luck when you're sowing the seeds. So it is, like I said, a little bit more time consuming, but definitely worth it because then you don't have as much thinning to do later on. So then after you carefully seed all of the seeds in their rows, you can just gently cover them up with soil and then pat down on top just to kind of hold the seeds in place. And then plant your next row of carrots anywhere from 8 to 12 inches next to your first row. And that's the perfect spacing. As your seedlings start growing, you're going to want to thin out, but that's a process for another time. And then you want to make sure you water in your carrot bed so that the soil stays moist. The carrot seeds need moisture to germinate, but they also need time. Carrots can take anywhere from 14 to 28 days to germinate, and sometimes that's the hardest part, is just waiting for them to germinate. So don't be frightened if a couple weeks goes by and you don't see anything happening. It's likely going to take a few weeks before you see any kind of germination. But it's also important to make sure that not too much time passes, because if you are still early enough in your season, you can replant and get a crop before the weather doesn't allow. So I always write down all of my planting dates in my gardening planner. I'll link to it in the description below. But then I can make sure I stay on track. And if too much time goes by and my seeds aren't germinating, then I know either I had bad seeds or something was off and I can replant before it's too late. But then it also allows me to stay on track of when I should be harvesting. It's just really good to keep records of all your planting dates. And the other cool thing is this gardening planner also allows you to write down where everything is planted so you can start implementing crop rotation in future seasons. There's all kinds of cool tracking sheets in there. So be sure to check that out in the description. But just know that carrots take a while to germinate. So give it a few weeks before you replant because it's very likely that they're just going to be slow. I planted little finger carrots, which are ready to harvest in just 60 days. So if you're somewhere that's a little bit cooler and you want a carrot that's going to be ready to harvest sooner, the little finger carrots are a great one because they're ready to harvest in 60 days. I also did Cosmic Purple and Tender Sweet. Both of these are really great varieties, but they take a little bit longer to mature, about 75 to 85 days, depending on the weather. Carrots ideally need temperatures around 40 to 80 degrees to grow sweet, well-formed roots. So if it's way hotter than that or way colder than that, you're not going to see much growth. If you plant a little bit late in the season during the fall and it gets too cold, the roots will just sort of go dormant, but then you should have growth again in the spring and you can harvest in early spring as the weather starts to warm up. But here in Zone 9, I'm planting in the very beginning of October and I should be able to get my harvest before the weather gets too cold and those roots sort of go dormant. So if you've never grown carrots before, or maybe you have and haven't had success, or maybe you're just trying to learn a bit more, just try it out in your garden this year. Homegrown carrots are so much tastier than those from the store, just like pretty much everything that you can grow out in the garden. Everything homegrown always tastes better. So try out carrots this year. And another really great fall crop to plant is potatoes. Potatoes are so delicious. They're probably one of the most popular things people buy at the store. And you likely even have some potatoes sitting on your kitchen counter that are starting to grow sprouts. And so you can just use those and plant those out in the garden and give it a shot. So if you head to this video right here, I talk all about planting already sprouted potatoes from your own kitchen. So head to that video next and I'll see you there.